Most people believe their lives are shaped by conscious decisions, careful choices, deliberate actions, and rational planning. But beneath everything you do, beneath every reaction and every thought, there is a silent blueprint guiding you, a hidden pattern that has been shaping your life long before you were aware of it. You don't see it, but it defines almost everything. This pattern is not random. It was built piece by piece through experiences that felt insignificant at the time. Moments of rejection, tension, fear, approval, or silence. Your brain recorded all of it. And from those recordings, it created a model of the world. A map of what is safe, what is dangerous, and what should be avoided at all costs. The unsettling truth is this: what feels familiar to you is not always what is healthy, and what feels uncomfortable is not always what is dangerous. Your hidden pattern works like a psychological gravity. It pulls you back to the same behaviors, the same emotional states, and the same outcomes, even when you consciously desire something different. You move through life thinking you're making choices, but the pattern is making most of them for you. It influences the people you are drawn to, the opportunities you pursue, the dreams you abandon, and the limits you unknowingly obey. You think you're living freely, yet much of your life is repetition. Not because you lack discipline, but because your mind is loyal to what it knows. Before you can ever break free, you must first learn to see the pattern. And once you see it, nothing will ever look the same. Your brain is a survival machine, not a self-fulfillment machine. It's designed to protect you, not to expand you. So instead of asking, "What will transform my life?" your mind constantly asks, "What feels known enough to keep me safe?" And the answer to that question becomes the foundation of your hidden pattern. The brain builds this pattern early. It studies every environment you grew up in, the tone of voices, the emotional climate, the consistency or instability of relationships. It watches how love was given, how conflict was handled, and how safety was earned. Then, without your permission, it draws conclusions about what life is supposed to feel like. If chaos was normal, the pattern becomes chaos. If emotional distance was normal, the pattern becomes distance. If inconsistency was normal, the pattern becomes inconsistency. Not because these experiences were good, but because they were repeated. Repetition makes the brain trust something, even if it hurts. This is why people re-enter unhealthy relationships, sabotage new opportunities, or shrink when things begin to go well. The brain confuses familiarity with security, and anything unfamiliar triggers an internal alarm. Growth, love, stability, and success all require stepping beyond the pattern, and so your mind resists them instinctively. Your pattern isn't logical, it's neurological. You're not stuck because you're weak. You're stuck because your brain is protecting an emotional script written years ago. Understanding this mechanism is the first step, because once you see how the pattern forms, you also begin to see how it can be rewritten. There's a deeper layer that keeps you trapped. The brain doesn't just create patterns. It creates internal narratives that justify them. These stories feel rational, mature, and responsible, but they're actually emotional armor disguised as logic. Before you take a step toward change, your mind whispers, "Now is not the right time." What if you fail again? You're not ready yet. Maybe this isn't for you. These thoughts don't come from wisdom. They come from fear. And fear speaks the language of reason because it knows reason is the only voice you obey. This is the loop. A new possibility appears. Your pattern detects unfamiliarity. The brain activates emotional alarms. Internal narratives arise to pull you back. You obey the narrative. The pattern is reinforced. You return to the same emotional states because they match the identity your brain has maintained for years. And identity is the strongest prison of all. If your subconscious believes you're someone who must always be strong, always give more than receive, or always expect disappointment, it will shape your behavior to preserve that internal consistency. Even if it hurts you, even if it limits you, even if you've outgrown the story entirely, the pattern survives because you keep playing your old role. But once you notice the loop, once you see the story forming before the behavior, the old role begins to fall apart. And in that collapse, a new version of you begins to emerge. The pattern that controls you isn't sustained by force. It's sustained by automation. It repeats because you act before you're aware of the impulse. But there is one thing the brain cannot override: conscious presence. Awareness interrupts the script. When you observe your thoughts, instead of obeying them, an internal gap appears. A moment of separation between impulse and action. In that small space, your entire future can change. That's why transformation doesn't happen through dramatic decisions or emotional promises. It happens through micro choices. The next breath you deepen instead of rushing. The next reaction you pause instead of exploding. The next automatic doubt you recognize instead of believing. Bit by bit, you begin to teach the brain a new language, a new emotional baseline, a new definition of safe. The pattern loses power because you stop performing the unconscious role it expects from you. And when the pattern breaks, what emerges is not a new version of you, but the real version that was always waiting beneath the noise. Here's the truth. You were never trapped by what happened to you. You were trapped by what your mind learned to believe because of it. But what is learned can be unlearned. What is repeated can be rewritten. What is unconscious can become conscious. If something in this video woke you up, a memory, a pattern, a realization, write in the comments, "I am ready to break the pattern." This small act is not symbolic. It is your first conscious step toward a life that finally reflects who you truly are.